Should you leave your current academic position for another university? Stick around and learn about 4 considerations that can help guide your decision-making process. Today on this episode of Navigating Academia. What's up, everybody? My name is Dr. J. Phoenix Singh, and I want to warmly welcome you to this episode of Navigating Academia, your leading source for guidance on how to advance your career in academia. As always, I appreciate the love, so please do take a moment to like and share this video with your friends, with your colleagues, with your students. Subscribe to our channel, hit that bell, and be sure to comment below. You can follow us at these social media accounts. So let's jump right in. Today we're going to be discussing 4 considerations to take into account when making a really big professional decision. And this is a decision as to whether or not you should go from a university that you're already in, so from an academic position you're already in, to an academic position at another university. Now, I certainly have had colleagues who've shifted from one department to another department within the same university. But oftentimes this was something where they were compelled to do that because their department was kind of shutting down. Oftentimes departments get merged into one another. These are things that people don't really talk about outside of academia. If it's something where you would like a video on that, please let me know in the comments below and I'm happy to make you one of those. But what I'm talking about here is I'm at University A, and all of a sudden, there seems to be a really good opportunity at University B. Should I bounce from University A or not? Sometimes the things we take into consideration make a lot of sense, but it's not a really comprehensive view to be able to, get a perspective on whether it's the right decision for us. And so that's the purpose of this video. So let's go ahead and take a look at consideration number 1. Consideration number 1 is, of course, your department. Oftentimes people think about it as being, your university. Let's say that you're at Howard University, which is down the street from me. Okay, you are at Howard. But it's not so much that you're at Howard, it's that you're in a department which is at Howard, and the department is going to be your family. The likelihood is you're going to end up seeing your work colleagues way more over the course of your life than you're going to see your actual family. So your colleagues kind of become your family. So obviously, if that family is not being supportive of you, is not being supportive of your personal development and growth, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be able to, be really dedicated and loyal to sticking around. And it's not just the colleagues, it's also the administration, who is the chair and deputy chair of your department, and are they supportive of you and of your goals? Now, I have been very lucky insofar as every department chair that I have either had or have been influenced by in some way, shape, or form have been really terrific. But there's definitely been stories where the dean who's overseeing the college, not so great. Not so great. Not supportive whatsoever is somebody who comes from a business background, so they're way more interested in making money and the dollars and cents than they are the human beings who are actually helping to generate that money. And I have had colleagues who have ended up leaving specifically because there's a bad dean. And that's so unfortunate, I feel. But it is something where, you don't want to be coming into work stressed every day, not because of your work, but because of the people that are surrounding you and the people that you say, this person kind of has some power over me. That's never a pleasant feeling to have. The next one is something as small as, in terms of people in your department, folks like the secretaries. I had the all-time greatest secretary, specifically when I was in my postdoctoral research fellowship. So Susan, if you're watching this, you're my favorite person ever. She was just so supportive, and anything that I needed. I was such a junior academic, and it's been like 10 years, and I love Susan to death, and we keep in touch, and I get texts on my birthday because she's my work mom. And it's just one of those situations where there's some people in your life who you never forget, and she was one of them. However, I had colleagues in another department who had the secretary from hell. And she was not only not supportive, she, made so much noise in her office, and she was like 2 years away from getting her pension, and was not at all helpful to anybody who was in the department. But she had been there for so long, and she had really curried a lot of favor, with the powers that be. And so because of that, there was no way that she was going anywhere. She also, very smart of her, kept very close to the chest kind of the workflows that she had developed over decades at the university in that department. So it was something where, that's a really unfortunate situation, and usually people don't think about the secretaries in terms of providing, quality of life when they're trying to make decisions in terms of career. It can make a huge difference in terms of, your ability to get your job done with as much speed as possible. It is literally the grease on the cogs of academia, and they deserve a huge amount of respect and appreciation. So make sure that if it's you got a really good secretary, it's their birthday, it's a holiday, bring them, flowers, bring them an edible arrangement, whatever they would like, whatever they're into. You make sure that you bring it to them, because they are amazing human beings. And finally, it's the course load expectations. Depending on the department that you're at, there could be really different expectations on you in terms of the course load you're going to take on. Is it a 2-2, meaning 2 courses per each of the major semesters? Is it a 4-4, and they're still expecting you to be able to serve on multiple committees? And not only that, but they're expecting you to have more graduate students every year, and develop your lab more and more, and more publications and more grants and all these things. It can be way too much. And it's not only which courses, it's what the courses are. Is it something like Psych 101, where you've got 150 students in an amphitheater, all of whose work you have to grade, whether or not you have a TA? I've seen situations where you don't have a TA or 2 TAs, but you've got 150 students. That's insane, especially if you have like essay projects. Oh my gosh, you're gonna die. Versus if you end up having a very small seminar of 10 to 15 students in your niche, that is a very different experience, I have found. So course load also is something that you may want to take into consideration. Consideration number 2 is your salary. Now, your salary is probably the thing that everybody thinks about when it comes to changing jobs, other than the people that you're working with. And one of the key things to understand here is that there are really only several big pay bumps in academia. Obviously, when you're a grad student, you're making nothing. Then you get a huge pay bump to your first salary when you're a postdoc. Then you get another big bump if you're on tenure track. This is what I'm talking about here. And you become an assistant professor. Then you get a big pay bump, probably the biggest one you'll get, to associate, because you usually get tenure as well. And I'll make a video and post it in the description below, a link to it, on the difference between an assistant, associate, and a full professor, their responsibilities, finances, this kind of stuff. Okay, so be sure to check that out. And then, of course, you'll get a bump again when you become full professor. Now, unless, though, you want to go into administration, you want to be a dean or a provost, or even a president of a university. I had a professor of mine who became president of several universities over the past decade. But it's something that, unless you want to go down that route, once you get to full professor, other than, every now and again you'll get a raise just as part of, kind of adjusted for inflation, but you're not going to get steady raises. I remember when I got my tenured full professorship in Norway. So I had a weird background. I was the youngest tenured full professor in the whole country of Norway in any field at any university. And I was 27, and I got this job, and I went to my mentor, who's this amazing guy, and I said, Stahl, what do I do now? And he said, you just enjoy it. He said, you're at the top echelon here, so now you just enjoy it. And I'm thinking to myself, am I gonna spend the next 60 years just in the same place and, having to come up with ancillary income, streams and these sorts of things? And so what a lot of people do, there's, one person in my field, I'm sure there's a lot, but there's one that I have in mind who's just notorious for jumping around to every university in his state the second that he gets the opportunity for a raise. And to be frank, if you got nothing tying you down, like family, etc., I suppose it makes sense. If you're in it, mostly if you're changing the jobs for the money, then it would make sense. When you're jumping, usually you can negotiate higher salary than whatever you have now. And if those other universities really want you, they'll negotiate it up. right? And you can even start a bidding war between, let's say, two different universities offering you positions as tenured full professors, once you get to that level. It could also be something where, you have a high degree of predictability in terms of what your raise will be at your university when you go from associate to full, and you may want to say, okay, I'm already tenured, I'm going to full professor, let me take a look at whether there's other full professor jobs at other universities, kind of in my area, and then go to them, see if you can end up getting a higher salary, and sometimes even if you get an offer, your university will match it to be able to keep you. These are kind of the dirty politics of money within academia, and it's something that nobody talks about, but that's why we have this channel, is to be able to talk about the reality of academia. Not only all the wonderful things about it, but also the things that maybe aren't, as transparent. So that's consideration number 2. You want to make sure you do kind of a cost-benefit analysis, because it's not all about the money. If you've got great amenities, etc., we'll talk about that in another consideration. If you've got great amenities, etc., you may just not want to leave. Consideration number 3 is your family. For me, family is number 1. Always. This is how my parents raised me. It's the values that I have as well. Family is number 1. It's more important than money. It's more important than these other aspects. So I have to take things into consideration, like, for example, for my kids, what's the school system like? I grew up in a public school system that was really high quality, one of the best in the country. We're very, very lucky to have it. It's one of the reasons my parents moved to the county that we grew up in. But I also have cousins who are raising kids in neighborhoods where the local school system is not very good. So they end up spending buku bucks sending the kids to private schools to be able to get the same quality of education that I had in a public school system. So sometimes you'll accept an academic position somewhere and you're not really thinking about the school system. Maybe you don't have a spouse or you don't have children at the time, and then you have children. You have them, you adopt, whatever, but you have kids all of a sudden. Okay, now you're taking that into account, and maybe for the first few years it's only preschools and all, so you're not thinking about it, but then when it really gets into elementary, middle, high school and all, at least that's the system in the States, you really want to take that into account, is the quality of the schools, and that may be a motivating factor for you to switch universities. Same thing when it comes to something like closeness to relatives. So again, it could lock in with having kids. You have kids, all of a sudden you want them to be around their grandparents, so you want to move somewhere else. It may be something where, as time goes on, you realize that you've been in a university where there's no family around whatsoever, and it's something that you want to reconnect with your relatives, and instead of flying across the country or driving across the state all the time, that's something that you want to prioritize. That would be a totally reasonable reason, in my opinion, to be able to jump universities. Same thing when it comes to a sickness in the family. If you have a sick parent, sick grandparent, sick cousin, whatever it is, to be able to take care of them, that is a very decent and honorable reason to be able to move. And finally is, of course, if you have a family, especially if you have kids, they get older and all, you don't have any ready access to any entertainment, cultural events, any enrichment opportunities for their personal growth, and there's really just nothing around. I have a friend who's at a university. It's a wonderful university, but it is in the middle of nowhere, and the university really doesn't put on a lot of events. They're mostly focused on research, so they're not putting on plays and orchestral stuff, and there's one movie theater in the town that gets only older movies and this kind of stuff. Sounds stupid, maybe even to some people, but the quality of life is critical. It's not just the quality of the university. The quality of your life is going to determine how well you're able to do your job and how innovative your work is going to be. And it's really not worth being at a university only for its name or only for the paycheck when you're miserable all the time. So that's consideration number 3. Finally, consideration number 4 is your opportunities. I'm talking about here your ability to develop as a professional within the university, also personally, but think about things like, are you able to, start a lab or a research team of your own? Within that, you obviously have to think about the quality of the undergraduate students that the university is attracting, who would be these people, working in your lab or just being in your classes. Again, that's a quality of life thing. If you've got kids who just really are disconnected, they don't care whatsoever, it's not going to be very fulfilling for you to teach. And if this happens over the course of, like a decade, oh my gosh, this would be a reason, at least for me, to move. Same thing when it comes to the quality of grad students. who you're supervising, you want really high quality graduate students. You want to make sure that you're able to attract them at the university that you are at. Same thing if you're in a field, let's say like medicine or the law, where you need continuing education, like continuing legal education, CLEs, continuing medical education, CMEs, and so forth. Is this something where there are those opportunities? Obviously, these days you can do stuff online. However, are there opportunities that are, around for you to be able to develop as a professional? And this doesn't just have to be for continuing education. This could be things like going to workshops to learn a new statistical analytic technique, to be able to learn about a new theoretical perspective on something. Maybe your department provides you with money to be able to go to conferences if one of your presentations is accepted. Are there opportunities for you to grow? And obviously, if you're in a field of scientific research, is there the opportunity to be able to get grants? Grants aren't something that you wake up one day and say, yeah, I'll apply for one of these things. There's a huge amount, particularly for the bigger grants, of infrastructure that's needed to develop these proposals, figure out all the financing. It really takes a village to do this, having seen it from the inside. So is that infrastructure there to support you in applying for grants? Because if it's not, and they're still expecting you to bring in a lot of grant money to support your salary, especially if you're a research professor and not tenure track, you really got to make sure that infrastructure is there. So that's consideration number 4. All right, y'all, thank you so much for watching. I want to hear from you in the comments below. What considerations would you take into account before making the decision as to whether or not to change universities? Maybe you have changed universities as an academic. Tell us a little bit about your experience. What were the motivating factors? Was it a good decision for you? Do you regret it? Let's share below, because this is something where we're all one big community in academia, and especially if you are a part of this Navigating Academia family, this is something where all of us sharing is critical. As always, if you have suggestions or requests for a future episode of this series, comment below as well and let us know. Don't forget to like and share this video with your colleagues, with your friends, and with your students. Subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media. If you're interested in signing up for one-on-one career coaching, please do send a phone call with me via the website below, and let's talk a little bit about your unique case and maybe even whether or not you should change universities. Let's talk about it and make the right decision for you and your family. Signing off, everyone. Have a great day, and remember to get out there, take chances, and be your best self. Thank you so much for stopping by, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here as always. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more in this series on navigating academia, please click on one of these links over here to be able to view more original content. I hope to see you there.